All right, so to understand, hey, we started yesterday. I'm going to repeat it outside, not in the text. He had said, identified, he went through h'tשכ, the tefillah h'tשכ. This is all to explain why Shmira Shabbos Derech Prat highlighted specifically, not just part of the Kiyum of Torah mitzvahs, elicits the bracha v'faratzta, this boundless bracha that's conferred upon Yaakov and not Avram and Yitzchak. To understand that from the mitzvah Rebbe, upon which this maamar is based, and essentially an elaboration on, the mitzvah Rebbe explains the h'tשכ, that it addresses 4 levels. There are 4 statements in the h'tשכ, and each one of them is the 3 levels, or the 3 kavim, we should say. Here the dik is not so much level, but kavim, on one level, but different kavim, namely chagas. So there's chesed, gvura, tiferes on all 4 levels identified here on this tefillah. And basically, the h'tשכ, well, let's review it, it's important. The dik being on echad. So without repeating again how it's seen in the words, but at chesed, gvura, tiferes, lifnei hatzimtzum. Hence echad, all oneness. Then it would be wise to have the place. Tiferes, Gedur, Vateres, Yeshua. So he explained the diak of Nasata here too. It's Tiferes, Gedula, it's Chesed. Yeshua, salvation is because it's Gvura. Yom Menucha, Gdusha, Menucha, Sholem, peace. That's Tiferes. Here the diak was Lamcha Nasata. Now when you give something, it simply transitions from one reshus to the other without any essential change. So the whole beer here was that the chagas, which is really to explain the heart of the maamar, to explain how is the kavim, chesed, gvur, tiferes in lifnei hatzimtzum. That's what's coming next. We kind of addressed it when we spoke about it, but we'll hear what the maamar has to say, of course. So here we're talking post-tzimtzum, and he said on 2 levels, kesed and even ak. And that is really Gilui HaHelam. It's Gilui HaHelam, which will explain further, means the potential is actualized, but there's no real change. In what sense is there no real change? There's no real change that not in kesed and not in ak, certainly, which is the first dargah, post-tzimtzum. No real change in the sense that there's no sense of separation. As we'll say later, to put it in its simple language again, to explain it to a McGill student, and the maamar will do it for us, but we'll say it here now, just in a simple phrase. Chagas lifnei hatzimtzum, you have the potential, this is the definition, you have the potential to manifest in any way or no way. And you chose to manifest, to express yourself, or give rise to chagas. So that's an embryonic potential stage. As chagas is in ak, it's you manifested this. That's not lost. It's still you. But here, in lifnei hatzimtzum, there's the awareness, the hergish, the sense of it could be anything or nothing. You chose this. That's helem. Helem means it's biskalolus in the market. In ak, it's you chose this, but what is not lost is it's you. That's the hergish in you. And then in atzilus, so that is already, that's ak, that's the second phrase in h'tשכ. Then Avram, Yogel, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and that's already atzilus, where there's already the spheres, And in Atzilus, there's already the sense of the chshivus of the sphere itself. In other words, the chshivus of this, there's already a sense of a virtue in chesed. These are beautiful, wonderful midas. Not so dominant is you're expressing yourself this way, but the way you express yourself is beautiful. The way you express yourself is wonderful. It's incredible. Is inspiring, is awesome, etc. So there's a description already here of in some sense, the mila of the actual revelation. Everything is relative in Chassidus, Bechlal. Atzilus is still bound up very much with, what did he say, the Lashon here was, Avraham Yogel, Ishtaushlos Eses Virus. And particularly, of course, the Midas, talking about Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the Midas. And then is the next one, the next phrase. That's the fourth level. This is already Biyah. Ava, Emes ve'emunah. What's emunah got to do with Gvura? Anybody remembers? How is that emunah, Gvura, Ava? Obviously, in the Dov is Chesed, but Menuchas, Emes ve'emunah. How is that Gvura? Menuchas Shalom Hashket v'vetach, Shalom, peace, harmony, estiferes. Anybody remembers? Yeah, emunah means it's Helen. Emunah, classic emunah is what you have to believe because you don't experience it, you don't see it. And that's because of Helen, exactly because of Gevurah. The question he left with is, so that's it, we've gone through all of Ishtalshut, Lifnei Tzimtzum, all the way down to Biyah. What is added by Menucha Shleima Shata Reitzibah? What is that? That's left unanswered. So Eis Hey now, to understand this B'toisvus beer. And the Shaila began, as we said, this is really the central, it seems. I didn't finish the Maimah, just on the next two paragraphs. So we're learning it together. But the Shaila basically is, how is there in Yonim of Gimel Kavim Koydem HaTzimtzum? Koydem HaTzimtzum is Achtus and Pshitus. It's the absolute wonders and Pshitus. Pshitus means, Poshet means divested of any tzir, of any form. So what Poshet means. Therefore, Pshat, the simple meaning, simple, without anything hidden, straightforward. So how could there be Schalkus of Gimel Kavin, Chal Kavin, in Lifnei Tzimtzum? So to understand this, so he was makdim the statement of the Eitzchayim, who, in one of the classic reasons, motives, purposes for creation. So he says, Teva Tov Lehitiv. It's the nature of good to do good, and because of the nature, so this is the Lashon of the Eitzchayim. It's at the bottom of page Nun Daled. Yeah, and these words are explained in great detail in Chassidus, B'frat and Semach Vav. So we'll just translate them because of the nature of good. Because since the nature of good is to do good, therefore there arose in His will to manifest lahad tzilus and ishtalshalus, to bestow. To bestow is beneficent. What's the word? Beneficence. Beneficence. No.
Beneficence.
Beneficence. Yeah, I'll trust you. If I can't trust you. Beneficence. I thought there was okay. Upon those that will receive it, that which those, upon the recipients. And therefore, the time goes, this Chaim Vital goes into say, Tzimtzum is out to make contracted himself, etc., in order to bestow. What do we see from here? That the Teva HaTov Lehitiv is the Sib of the Tzimtzum. That's why there's a Tzimtzum, which is the whole process of creation. So, end the quote. What do we see from here? We see the fact, we have to understand it, but the Metzius is, it's already the first step in understanding this, that there exists the inyan of what? of toiv, chesed, where lift that tzimtzum. Because it's the toiv that is the source of the tzimtzum. So therefore, there's a kavim, as it was pointed out yesterday, if there's toiv, so maybe there's just chesed. But the implication is, once you have one kav, implicit is another. If there's chesed, chesed implies gevura, and furthermore actually implies a possible potential fusion to tiferes. So this teva toiv is chesed. Now, let's pick up again the Vizel Gam Masha Omru. Page Nun Hey, 4 lines from the top of the page. Excuse me a moment. We celebrated last night. Baruch Hashem. Dalakil, and to that all of you who participated so generously, both personally and selling tickets. Okay, so picking up the text now, what's Vizel? What's the Vizel? And this is, he just said that Lifnei Tzimtzum from the h'tchk, there is the union of what? Of Kavim. So this is also reflected in Omer Razal, it's a famous medrash, Masha Neshama Mbalas, Manashama Mbalas Aguf, just like the Neshama fills the body, Kach HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mbalas Olam, so too the Eibishter fills the world. Usually it's understood as the world, meaning actual final creation. But so this explains Masha Kosem Mbalas Olam, that's pshat in medrash Pasha pshat. But on a deeper level, a more inclusive level, Mambalas Olam is Masha Kosem Beitzchaim, what the Chaim speaks of. At the beginning of creation, the Ein Sof was, quote, Mamale Kol Mokim Achol. So what's the Zehu? The Zehu is that Lifnei Tzimtzum, the Ein Sof is Mamale Mokim Achol, is analogous to what? To Neshama filling the guf. So that's already Zehu, that there is a Lifnei Tzimtzum Kavim, just like the Neshama has different koiches invested in different parts of the body. So we see here from this medrash, similar to what the h'tchk is saying, Teva Toiv, there is Toiv. That is the cause of the whole Tzimtzum. Where in Lifnei Tzimtzum? So we see from this Maimar Chazal, the analogy to the neshama and that's in Lifnei Tzimtzum, which was Mamala Kol Mokim Achol. Kacha Kadosh Baruch Hu Mamala esa Mokim, esa Olam. Nemar HaMoshel, Chazal used the Moshel of what? Ma'an Neshama Shemamala esa Guf. So pretty clear, yeah? This is the pshat. Ella points out the distinction. Shemoshel Zeh. So it seems the pshat coming now is this. He said Vizel, the h'tchk is saying a similar thing to the medrash, because the h'tchk is saying Teva Toiv Lehetiv. That's kind of a moshel. It's a moshel. Teva Toiv Lehetiv. The person was a good person. It's going to do good. It's a moshel of the neshama, a person. It's the same. Chazal is also using a moshel of a neshama. Ella. The difference is shemoshel zeh in medrash, ubinegeli in achayis. What we're pointing out, the analogy between neshama and guf and Ein Sof and Lifnei Tzimtzum, Mamala Mokim Achol Olam. So in the medrash, it's the point of the analogy is li'in achayis, these lapshos lahachis asaguf, just like the neshama enlivens the body. So too, overall, not to matter specific middah, the chalal, the chayis. So too, the Eibishter is memale mokim achol. The Moshe b'h'tchk, but h'tchk, we're not talking about the overall relationship of the neshama and the guf. But the h'tchk is bringing the Moshe using the neshama person. Toiv is to bring out benegel teva toiv shebenefesh. We're identifying the teva tov shebenefesh. That's what Eitz is saying, and it's clearly that the teva tov is where already lifnei tzimtzum. This elo, the last two lines, is just not negeya. It's not starting. Sometimes the elo starts a whole new direction. It's not doing that. It's just pointing out. It's just pointing out. Overall, the Eitz and the Medrash are both saying that lifnei tzimtzum, the analogy to neshama, period. The Medrash mitzad chayis, the neshama over enlivens, and the Eitz pointing to teva tov, to one particular midah, one kav chesed. Conclusion: what we need to know from here is the statement. We have the hasbara, but the statement, the fact, and that is that there's an analogy to the neshama lifnei tzimtzum. And the neshama has these midas, it's toiv, and so on. So there is toiv lifnei tzimtzum. That's what we need to know. And we need to explore this further to understand. To understand the analogy to the neshama, it seems to fall short. Neshama says koiches tziyurim, it's a whole, even before it comes into the guf. How is this an analogy to lifnei tzimtzum? What does it mean? So this is what he goes on to explain. So from here to the end of the Ois is the Shaila, questioning the analogy, and then Acha Inyan in the Vav begins the answer. Then says, actually, when you teach a mind, but the person who teaches should learn the whole thing first himself, understand it. Better way to teach, but we're learning it together. Okay. Meaning, Sof and the Neshama. Shadin Yon, the Neshama, he lahachiyos. Neshama is animates, gives life, meaning. V'haynu shegam k'moish mitzad atzmo. Even the neshama as itself created miradasa l'vistapshus b'guf shipshuta. Tracing back the neshama to its very pristine source before it's invested in the guf, and it's posted there beyond the specifics of specific manifestations of the eser koiches. Umevadai shemufshetes meser koiches pratim, and certainly beyond the neshama at its core is beyond the articulation of 10 individual faculties. Still, it's a life force. Bottom line, it's a life force. Integral to its very identity is it's an energy that animates, that can give life to a body. And how will it do so? Which means, this statement here, he just said a moment ago, it's a mufshut me'eser koiches pratim. And he says, dafka de eser koiches. What it means, l'chura, is, it's explained elsewhere. It means, if you look at the source of the neshama, you're not going to identify the 10 koiches, but when it manifests, it must manifest this way. It's not true of the Ein Sof. Ein Sof must manifest with eser svirus or manifest at all, certainly not. But the nefesh, so in other words, the eser koiches are very latently embedded in its spiritual DNA through life. It's life, but when it will manifest, it cannot manifest any other way than this way. So it's embedded. So therefore, how is this an analogy, a parallel to Ein Sof? Now, varayel is there. The raya has to bring a raya. We just said it's mufshid, it's pashid. And then he says, but when it manifests, it will and can only manifest with these 10 faculties and no any other way. What's the raya? So when the neshama comes down, is invested and clothed in the guf. So what's animating the guf is the neshama. It's life force. Actually, the point here is so much is more highest than the eser koiches. The fact that it comes into the guf, it animates it, it gives it life. So what does it mean? Even before it comes into the neshama, it's a life-giving energy. And again, the diak is life-giving in this way. Life-giving in which way? In the way of h'tשכ. Doesn't spell it out, but this is implicit here. Shegam mitzad atzma inyono lahachiyos, and lahachiyos, as he said before, dafke with h'tשכ, otherwise it would not be connect, it wouldn't be able to animate and live in the body, the eye to see, the heart to feel, etc. We're following this more or less. The raya gedoliyos is now bigger raya. No, let me see. Reincarnation. What's the raya? What's the raya that what? That the neshama is essentially a life-giving entity where the h'tשכ are intrinsic to it. The raya is kasher ha'odam misnag ba'ifim bilti adot. See what happens after 120 years and a person's conducting himself unsavourably. So one of the punishments in the Nishal that the neshama is reincarnated in the body of doimim, inanimate thing, a growing thing, chai, an animal. And the point is, Vitzah, godel the neshama, whatever the hasbod is, but the fact is that it's great pain. Now, why is it pain? Even though it's not, it came out of the body, right? If we're going to say that outside the body, the fact that it animates is not relevant to its identity. Okay, so now you're going to take that and put it into a guf. So what? It depends where it is. It's not animating. It's not investing. It wouldn't be a tzar to put it somewhere else. It doesn't matter where. It's oblivious to its surrounding. If it's not fundamentally an animating force, meaning to say tied to kelim and seeking to express itself. That's what it is. It wants expression, chayas, animate. That's why it's a tzar, to be trapped in a daimim. It can't express itself. So it's not just an essential being. Doesn't matter where you put atzmi, where you put atzmi, doesn't matter where he is. He's unaffected by his environment. That's an atzmi. But chayis is about expression and animating. It's a big tzar to be imprisoned in a doimim, a tzemeach or a chay. So let's look at the conclusion. The neshama fundamentally before it comes into the guf, even as it is beyond articulated, manifested 10 koiches. They're there. Its nature is to animate and dafka through h'tשכ. End of discussion is how we're drawing a parallel between the neshama and the Ein Sof. With all of the relative shitos of the neshama, it is an animating entity. It gives life, and it gives life through h'tשכ. So it's in its spiritual DNA. The Yitzchayim is using Tavat Tevel Hativ for what? For the Ein Sof Tzimtzum, the Medrash is saying Man Neshama Male as a Guf Kadosh Baruch Hu. The Medrash is outright, drawing a parallel to the Neshama. How so? In the Nimshal Yachash B'chinas Ein Sof, but the Nimshal, the Eibishter is infinite and boundless. But it's a nature of good to do good. Well, had to less as how could you say such a thing? That's not Ein Sof. That's not infinite, boundless. True, it's a gilui. But what does Ein Sof mean? There is no boundary, no limit to its hispashtus. And Hashem could choose, could there manifest, express endless vidas. But not after the way it has actually emerged. But in other ways, endless possibilities. And even deeper than that, as we said earlier, doesn't even have to be revealed at all, never mind in endless ways or infinitely. How we drawing an analogy, that's the cause of the tzimtzum, and what's the parallel? Fundamental question, friends. Yeah, what the matter is as follows. It's true, it's not a perfect marshal. The analogy, if you want to remind me for Fabrengen, just put the word dimyan. The other day speaking to, so there's two things. Actually, I was reminded, Ephraim sent a message to us, but I didn't say it because it really needs an intimate Fabrengen still, about the Malachim. But now a second thing, this is something that could be said publicly. But I'm just doing this just as a tease. Also, it's not part of the Maimon, that's not going to go into it, but what I want to tell you is this, that Rabbi Glick said to me, he called me the other night, yeah. Now the Rebbe says in Tanya, at the end of Perek Gimel, when he explains Chachma, Bin, and Das, so he says that without Das, so any emotions that are born from intellectual contemplation, if it is not Das, whatever Das means, Eina Ela Dimyoin Shav, it's only false illusions. So he asks, false illusions? Dimyonis. What's the false? It's because there are dimyonis which are not false, even though they are imaginary. The word's imaginary. How could that be? It's imaginary, so why is it? Where's the emes? There is such an Indian, certainly for. Anyway, so God willing, I'll share with you by Faberenge. The units which are virtuous and not false. That never speaks of the units of Akoponim. I just remind you because the word dimich. Let's go back. I don't want to distract. So what's the analogy here? Only in as much in italics. Yes, no, inyan the tevatov. Yeah, it's there. It's present, but it's not hardwired that way. Let's see what he says. But not the same way. No, first of all, sorry. That is similar to, in that sense, that there is that the neshama is life-giving. Aval, however, so the analogy, the Medrash says chayim. Aval, the vadai, so there's chayim, there's energy in the neshama. However, that's where the analogy stops. But it's unlike the Eidin of Nifnei Tzimtzum, the Teva Toiv there is unlike the way this exists within the neshama. Elagam Teva Toiv Gufa b'chinas Ein Sof, but the way Teva Toiv is in the Ein Sof, it there too, it's infinite. What does this mean? Let's look at the Moshe. It's by the neshama, even though the neshama coming down to the guf, it's tremendous descent. Nonetheless, there's still a connection. It's not like, in other words, the neshama has to undergo a tzimtzum hagadol. It doesn't, in order to be invested into the guf, which just means a radical transformation in terms of its overt expression. Not so. We don't find such a thing. There isn't such a thing. Which anyway, everything everything that the Eibishter, all the entire process has to be also for the neshama? The answer to that is, so since I asked the question, is that when we say in the neshama, we're talking chokhmah datzilus, period. Because lifnei is not shaykh to speak even neshama. Identifiable neshama starts at tzilus. The Chiddush Alter Rebbe is that it's mushrish in atmos, but that's not the neshama. It's where it's rooted. If we're speaking the neshamas, it starts in this word neshama starts chokhmah datzilus. It's in Tanya. It's the whole beer in Perek Beis in Tanya. It starts in tracing the neshama, as he speaks, as begins to spell it out, he starts with chokhmah datzilus, the whole mashal of machshava, of blowing from the pnimius, and so too he says there, he spells it out, it's chokhmah datzilus, all neshamas are rooted there. The moyach of the Father, the moyach of the Father. The moyach of the Father is already a tzir of chokhmah, it's the etzem ha-moichin, all fine and good. But it's already basically post-since when we speak about neshama. So let's get the flow here again. So even though it's a big descent, but there's shayich, that the fact that when it comes down, there's no radical tzimtzum. It just goes through a tzimtzum, not a radical one. It can animate and give life to the guf. That's because that's because even itself it's animating. Now that is true also of the nimshal. The fact is, post tzimtzum, we have these revelations in creation. Invested in it. That's because before the tzimtzum, here's the analogy here. There is this union of gilui and chesed and animation. There is. She's saying in the Aval, however, very different to the neshama. There, unlike the neshama, kind of hardwired, not so in the Ein Sof, that it's got to be this and nothing else. And there's a b'chinas pshitos legamri, and it's completely poshut. Meaning, v'hainu and hainus. Shali yosef b'chinas Ein Sof, as the teva toiv is in Ein Sof, hare bevadai nimtze by gam b'chinas ha'chesed v'atoiv. Because he's Ein Sof, the potential. There's also chesed and toiv. But it's not defined and bound by it. It could be in the other way. Simple language. Hits it. Nailed because he's Kel Yochel, there's Teva Toiv there also. Unlike the Neshama, it's not Mitzat Kel Yochel. That's what a Neshama is. Okay, to continue that in greater nuance, Be'ezer Hashem, tomorrow. I'm often reminded that the Rebbe told the Ilonis van Barim, Tavshech HaBeis, they were learning that the Rebbe said to them, Nissen Lemenov, the celebrated Mashpia, that the Maimah Shabbos is the way the Bachim learn Chassidus during the week. So that you know the Bachim, that era, Yael was already married already, but these were Maskilim, Oivdim, and it's reflected in the mind. Okay, that's not at least negate to us. Mind is eternal. It's a challenge for us also to be like that, maybe that.